Should you buy the Adidas Trae Young 2? These definitely have a different look and like feel than the ones. Let's take a look.
Motherfucker, I've been mortified, 45, feeling like a Mordecai. I ain't regular, feel like Jordan wearing 45. Traumatized, victimized, seen some of my niggas die. Knock you off a base with a bat when them niggas slide. Homicide, genocide, televised, emphasize, perpetuating war. Tell that nigga he gon' pick a side. Hood ties from hood lines, my nigga doing dope lines. Don't run into the cops, that's a big exercise. Don't run into the cops, that's the motto. I don't see it coming to an end like legato.
Welcome back to our channel. Today I'm going to hit on the different performance aspects like cushioning, traction, support, just all that stuff. But before I get into that, we'll go ahead and knock out some of the basic info first. So these are going to retail for $140, and that does line up with last year's model, so no price jump to worry about there. But this is Trae Young's second signature shoe to release with Adidas. The Trae Young ones were honestly pretty popular too, like not even necessarily for performance, more so I think like mainly kids just like how Trae Young a lot, and just kind of how he plays the game, and I do too personally, so I guess you can throw me in there. But the design to the Trae Young one, it was super sick, and unlike some brands, or I guess at least within like some shoe lines, you do get a pretty big change in the appearance for this second model. I guess not a lot change from the midsole though. They do have the same like 3-loop pattern that's kind of worked in there, and it reminds me a little bit of the Adidas like trefoil logo. I know I did say that last year like on the Trae Young 1 review, but I mean major changes to the front of the shoe. The Trae Young 2's lost like that patch that kind of ran over the laces. Well, you do have like more lacing loops, but I'm going to talk about that more, a little bit more though here in a second. But I do like the 3 stripes kind of running across the upper. That's kind of specific to this colorway though. I don't think that shows up on some other one, but that does look super clean. But I do like you're going to get that same little Trae Young logo kind of tossed onto the tongue there that showed up on the ones. And the last spot to look at is going to be the heel. It's going to be pretty simple back there with like some Adidas branding on the pull tab. They also throw on his last name to the back, but I don't know. I do like these, but to be honest, like I didn't love the first few colorways that dropped, and the model looked a little bit funky from the photos. I'll say like I'm a bigger fan now that I actually have them in hand, but we'll just leave that all alone now and kind of check out how these shoes hold up on the court. So now checking out the materials and the performance side, and starting off with the cushioning. I mean, the cushioning setup is going to be pretty much the exact same from the Trae Young 1. The Trae Young 2 is going to get a light strike midsole paired with some boost cushioning in the heel, meant to give you a lightweight responsiveness and additional comfort. That's kind of how Adidas lays it out there for you on their site. So cushioning was one of the stronger points on the Trae Young 1. Like, people did kind of have their things to say about that model, but comfort was never one of them. And you would kind of hope for that because, I mean, one, at $140, like, these things are like right there in line with some of the most expensive shoes that Adidas puts out, like D Rose, Dame, Donovan Mitchell, all cheaper models. So kind of a more expensive shoe from Adidas alone. But the second reason is, like I just said, you're going to get a combination of light strike and boost. So last year I was definitely impressed with just like the immediate like soft and pillowy feel that the Trae Young 1 gave you. And the Trae Young 2 does feel like it's going to be a little bit more responsive than the ones. Well, actually, let me kind of rephrase that, because this is like what I've actually felt from this model this year. Like, for some reason, the overall cushioning is going to be a little bit more firm. But like that being said, I've already started to notice them loosen up. So you should like expect a little bit of breaking time on the 2s, but I mean, it loosens up for you pretty quickly. But at the same time, you're going to get like amazing impact protection from the heel on this model. So you're going to have that to look forward to also. And then using our durometer to check out the midsole. This year is always kind of fun to do because we do check out like both cushioning sections. So in the front half where you're going to have that light strike, like I said, these are going to read like at a 34, and that alone is going to be softer than like average. But then we move along to the heel and checking out that boost cushioning, like those are only reading at a 20. So that is a pretty good indication of how like these feel in play. And of course you're going to have that like sock-like feel to the upper, and that just makes it feel like basically there's nothing on your foot. So I mean, honestly, cushioning yet again is a nice spot for a Trae shoe line. So now getting into more of the materials and the support, we'll start off looking at the upper because that's like the most noticeable change that came from these models in my opinion. So the Trae Young 2 is going to get what Adidas calls an SCK 360 knit upper, and that's supposed to mold to your foot for an adaptive fit for next level lockdown. And before I get into that, I always like to just kind of point out Adidas seems to be doing a lot of this too. Like 25% of the components used to make the upper for the Trae Young 2 is going to be made out of a minimum of 50% recycled content. That's a lot of numbers in there, but basically I just like whenever brands do use those like sustained materials and like that recycled content for obvious reasons, kind of helping out the planet. But like I said, some major changes to just like the upper construct alone. And I gotta be honest, like with this thinner material, I kind of just assumed that the weight would come down. And I guess that's why we don't assume things, because these actually weigh 478 grams, which is higher than last year's model. And I'm not the shoe weight police. That being said, that's a little bit higher than you'd like to see a low top shoe, but it's still nothing serious, not up into that 500 range. I wouldn't say they feel heavy on the court either, but now we're kind of into the support section, and I think that's kind of where the Trae Young 1 did get some of like the biggest knocks on them. Like, you had some heel slippage, you only had the 2 lacing loops, so not a lot of people just didn't really love the lockdown on the 1s. For the 2s, I have some good and I guess some bad news from what I felt like. And I mean, on the Trae Young 2, you're gonna have like for the upper, it's pretty thin, like similar to like what I felt on the LeBron 20. You got that like knit for the upper. I felt like that was going to be a problem, but honestly, there's been no movement on my side to side. Like, it feels pretty secure on my side to side cuts. But heel slippage, there is a little bit of movement. Like, it's not going to be terrible, but it is / kind of was there the first few times that I played in these. And like, you know, I haven't like popped out of them or anything like that, so I'm keeping it on the table that they might kind of round into form. But it's worth kind of mentioning, and it's worth monitoring that there is some heel slippage. But I mean, outside of that, the Trae Young 2 feels pretty quality for sure. Wrapping it up with the traction and taking a look at the pattern first, the Trae Young 2 gets a durable rubber outsole with multi-directional herringbone patterns and flex grooves that are meant for explosiveness and out-of-this-world agility. 2 things that Trae Young kind of happens to embody. So the pattern itself is actually very similar to the Trae Young 1s. Like, they had the same herringbone and like radial combo. It was just set up a little bit different. And the Trae Young 1s, I'm not gonna lie, they kind of let me down a little bit, like just for the grip. And like, these are 2 historically good traction patterns, like between like especially the herringbone pattern itself. But it just wasn't a ton of bite on last year's model. But I'm telling you, it looks like Adidas has found the light on the Trae Young 2, because these things are sticky. Like, that's honestly the first thing I noticed from this model whenever I was taking them out of the box. And Adidas has me in a spot where it's like, most of their shoes don't usually impress me for traction alone, so honestly, it's normally the first thing that I'll go to. And I knew I was in pretty good hands with the Trae Young 2. Like, even just doing our squeak test, you can hear these bad boys like just squeaking. So that's just a nice sign, because I personally can't stand shoes that have bad grip. Like, if you're a guard, like half your game is usually based off of if you can take off and start and stop quickly. So having traction is going to be a key part to that, and these play really nice. And the grooves are going to be pretty deep, so pair that with having nice impact protection, and these could definitely go outdoors. But to finish off with sizing, I did go true to size, and these give you a little bit more room in the toes than last year's model, like a thumb's width for the length, but it's going to be standard on the width. So I mean, it's not going to be like a wide or a narrow model. But overall, I mean, the Trae Young 2, it did make some improvements. The cushioning didn't really change much. It's got a slightly different feel, but I guess, I mean, at the same time, it's the same stuff being used, and it could just me be kind of still feeling those out. Support, that could use a few touch-ups. Like, big props on the traction though. Like, that's a major improvement, and traction categories a spot that Adidas struggles a lot. So that was a big jump up there, because these things are sticky. But all things considered, should you buy the Adidas Trae Young 2? If support's your only concern, like, then maybe not, if that's what you're going for. But everywhere else, these things check the boxes, so go for it. Thank you guys for taking time to watch. Feel free to throw us a follow or a sub if you like this video. And if you're interested in buying the Trae Young 2 and you want to support our channel, just click the link here on screen, or we have links down below or in our bio. So feel free to check that out. But until next review, I'm Landon from Shoewear. Peace.